Order this regular board meeting for March 28th, 2018 for the Pullman School District. We'll begin with a flag salute led by our student representative here, Patrick Dinges.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First up tonight on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Superintendent Maxwell, are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
There's no changes to the agenda, but I will make a note that we did originally have policy 2409 that was taken off after we realized it was not the corrected copy that should have been in. So that was withdrawn, and you'll see that next time we meet. But just in case you saw it and it doesn't show up tonight, you're wondering what happened. But the agenda as presented is correct.
Okay, thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the agenda be approved as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next we have reports, correspondence, and program, and we'll begin with our ASB report. Patrick.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Pullman High School right now is in the midst of its executive and class office elections. We had a lot of constitutional changes that have come in that have led to new positions and new requirements. New positions include class press secretaries, just to, with our increasingly digitalized and social media-based forms of communication for today's youth, we think that it's an important way to connect students with goings-on at the school, and so that's new. Elections themselves are going to be held after spring break. Should be a lot of new faces. It's going to be pretty competitive. We've had a lot of interest too, so we'll be someone new up here soon. So that concludes the ASB report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Have a good spring break.
Okay. Next we have board reports, beginning with Director Weed.
Okay, so let's see. Starting on March 3rd, I spent all day, that's the 5 a.m. flight out and the 12 a.m. Sunday flight in Olympia for the Resolutions Committee meeting. The Resolutions Committee is of the State Board of School Directors, and it reviews and edits and approves the permanent association positions of the school directors. And we are completely moving everything around right now to align our permanent positions with the legislative issues that are established by the WASDA Legislative Committee. So it's been a fun and confusing time, but I think in the end result will be awesome. So that was on March 3rd. On March 10th, I was once again in Olympia from 5 a.m. to 12 a.m., which is getting old. This was for the annual conference planning, and we just talked about all the discussion on the first day, like we went to the poverty one, and then there's the new school board thing. So we're trying to think of some things to do on the early bird session. Then we discussed some potential speakers. The opening keynote speaker that was announced about a week or so ago will be Mark Prensky, P-R-E-N-K-S-Y, who is very interested in student voice and that sort of thing, and we'll be doing some, wanting to do some extra student rep work with the student rep, board reps there, so that'll be fun. And then of course, the hardest thing is coming up with the theme for the conference or the name of the conference. So it's going to be either embrace and indulge or embrace your influence or embrace comet influence. But anyway, we've narrowed it down to at least 3 words, maybe fewer. And then let's see. Spring break, of course, is next week for our Pullman schools, but practices and games are still going on. So it's spring break for some, not necessarily for others. And then coming up, of course, in April and May, it's spring testing time coming up, so that'll keep our kiddos busy. And then there's just lots of sports going on. As you could see out here, there's a track meet and baseball and softball and everything in between. So I think that covers it. It's keeping me out of trouble.
Thank you. We were evidently in Olympia on the same day because that committee
Yes.
was there the same time that the
Yeah,
nominations.
you were at the WASDA headquarters. We were at middle school somewhere because
Yeah.
your meeting took precedence, I guess. I don't know.
Well, thank you for serving on both of those committees. All right, thank you. Director Everman.
I didn't do anything quite so exciting, but I did have a good day over at Sunnyside on Monday. Fourth grade teacher Kara Clavinaugh had invited me to come over and observe the class work through their Lewis and Clark expedition. So the way she has it organized is there's a captain and privates and guides and secretaries, and they follow Lewis and Clark on their journey, and it was quite interactive. So, and after 2 hours I was exhausted, and I was just watching them do everything. So, yeah, so anyway, I wasn't a captain, I was just an observer. And then yesterday I met with two students at Jefferson, Alden Duff and Jasmine Washington. And I asked them what they might think about in terms of school safety, because you might have recognized their names. It was in the paper last week. We came up with 4 conclusions, and they were kind of, the first one was keep guns away from school at all cost. So I thought that was good. And then I had told the students that I have noticed more patrol cars in and around the schools, and they liked that. They thought the presence of the police was not invasive. They were just patrolling, and they said the third thing that needs to be done is the police, when they're patrolling, need to take action if necessary. So, not just patrolling. So I thought that was good. I'll let the police department know that. And then the other thing we agreed on was perhaps they wouldn't mind walkthroughs. That is, having policemen walk through the halls on occasion. So I think they they looked at it as a security issue and a security blanket. I don't know how younger kids would look at it. So, but anyway, that was the outcome from that meeting. Both were very articulate and very concerned. And I said, before laws take place, it's 2 years, so we need to do some things that can happen now. And all 4 of those things we can do now. So we don't have to wait for state or federal laws to be changed, but we can do these things starting now. So if the kids feel safer, they'll do better in school. So that was the end of my report.
Okay, thank you. Director Tanner.
I have no report, but I do want to mention along the lines with the patrolling that you're talking about. I have actually noticed increased patrolling around Sunnyside when I dropped my son off, and I contacted the principal just to say, hey, what's going on? And she said that they are trying to do increased routine patrolling around the schools. So I have noticed a difference in the last week or two. So no further report.
Okay, thank you. I don't really have a report, but I didn't know if you guys noticed in the WASDA Direct a familiar face. Pass that down and see if you won't, Amanda, but
Susanna?
yeah.
Our former assistant superintendent.
Yeah. It was fun to see her there. Uncredited, but still fun. Okay, and superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
I actually was in Mrs. Clabinow's class on Monday as well, part of the time when Jim was there, and so that was an invitation. And then actually I believe we both went and visited Mrs. Boyme's class for a short period of time as well. They are both doing the same unit on Lewis and Clark, but they're in different starting positions. So it was fun to visit the classrooms, and I appreciate the invitations. Today I was also at Franklin Elementary in Mrs. Flavetich and Mrs. Steele's class doing Pig Out with Books and reading to the classes, and so that was a lot of fun. So I've been out visiting and getting a chance to actually be in the classrooms this week has been great. Also want to recognize Mr. Groh and Mr. Thornton for putting in for a bike grant through the state of Washington, which we were awarded, LMS was awarded $30,000 to purchase bikes, helmets, a trailer to store the bikes, curriculum, and training for their staff. And so I just want to give a shout out to them. Did an excellent job putting that together. So very pleased. So congratulations on obtaining that grant. That'll definitely boost our PE program. So also, just to let you know, we've applied to Avista as a possible site for electric charging stations for several of our buildings, the center, the high school, and possibly Kamiak. No guarantee. We just filled out the application and sent it in, and we'll see what develops from there. So, construction update, Kamiak Elementary, on schedule. The weather has been very, very nice this week, so I'm counting on a excellent progress report at tomorrow's meeting. But things are moving along, and I think you can tell by the photos I send almost every Friday that we're making great progress. Also, tonight we're going to recognize our National Board Certified Teachers. We have two new, and that would be Isabella Haller-Greck and Holly Steele. Isabel is out at a conference, and we did not hear back from Holly, but I know she was in class today. But I just want to recognize they are our newest National Board Certified Teachers. And that's quite a rigorous process, and what an honor. But we do have with us Johnny Stevens, who renewed her National Board certification, along with Doug Winchell in the studio. And Elizabeth Powell. So we had 2 new, 3 renew, and they join a full list, and I'll just read these folks off because I don't want to leave them out. So Amy Bumpus, Catherine Colville, Debbie Crabtree, Matt Fluster, Isabel Haller-Grick joins that group now, Declan Keogh, Heather Lohmeyer, Marcus McClear, Craig McCormick, Rob McPherson, Jill Nelson, Nancy Nelson, Sanda Pagan-Rivera, Elizabeth Powell, Amy Ripley, Tammy Sewell, Holly Steele, Laura Stegner, Johnny Stevens, and Doug Winchell. So a phenomenal number of nationally board certified teachers for a district our size. So I just want to say thank you to those teachers and congratulations. It is a lot of work, and but well worth it. And our kids benefit every day, and so do our staff and our community. So congratulations.
Hey, Jack.
So with that, I'm going to move on to the next report as part of my report, and that's going to be presented to us by Grace Groh, our teacher on special assignment specializing in ELA.
ELA.
And you didn't hear me say any... I didn't mention math. Oh, there it is. So.
First of all, thank you for having me, and I want to make sure you can see me.
Yep.
Okay, because I guess I'm not the tallest person, so I'm just teasing. Good to go. Then you go recording it. Just.
There you go.
So I just want to introduce myself officially. My name is Grace Groh, and I have the privilege of being a teacher on special assignment this year, curriculum instruction and assessment. Johnny and I have decided to call ourselves agents of change, so just to have some fun together.
There you go.
And I just put that on there, obviously. So I'm going to be talking about our Learning Improvement Day that we just had on March 16th. First picture there is Love and Logic, and there was a lot of people there who wanted to learn about Love and Logic and how to use that in the classroom. What's the why behind professional development? I just kind of wanted to go over just a brief of what's the why and why it's so important. Efficacy, support, building capacity, collaborative, and student growth. Those are just some of the reasons teachers need to continue to learn. Efficacy, because the belief that our students can learn is really the #1 predictor of how students grow. It's teacher belief. Support, we need to support teachers and continue to support their learning so that they don't get burnt out, because let's be honest, this is a job that continues to change, and we need to continue to learn with that. Building capacity, that's twofold. It's funny Johnny just brought up. It's building capacity in our teachers and having our buildings have capacity as well. So it's just the how, the continuous assessment and how to learn about differentiation and instruction. And my big thing is student relationship. That's my passion, that every kid wants to feel valued and safe. And then that's how that kids will learn. Collaborative, obviously very important in student growth. That's really why we want to continue to learn as teachers and educators, because our students deserve the best. One of the things I did was I wanted to connect some of the sessions to our framework, and I think the Downingston framework has gotten a bad rap. It has been used as an evaluation tool, I understand that, but really it's about reflective practice. Educators reflecting on their practice and to continue to grow. And so some of the things I did is I connected some of our items here that we have for sessions, and I went through, and it's red, so it's kind of hard to see. And these are where they would fit into the domain. I thought that was kind of valuable, just because if we're going to continue to grow and learn, that it's fluid. And so these are some of the sessions we hit. I'm not going to read through those to you because you can see. This is most of them, but not all of them. There's also some other ones that were really important, but these are the ones that I hit upon that kind of connected to the frame. One of the great things that I was able to do is I did a Survey Monkey this time, so kind of moving to the 21st century instead of just paper, pencil, although I do still believe in that as well. But this was pretty easy. I had about 120 responses, and this was one of the questions. Overall, how would you rate the quality of this professional development day? And 67% said excellent. So this is real data that I took from the paper and from the Survey Maker. We had 95 do it digitally, and the rest were on paper. So I just thought it was great. We got some really great feedback. Obviously 26 good, 5% fair, and 2% poor. Sorry, go backwards there. How useful did you find the information? That was another question, because we really want to listen to our teachers and use their feedback in planning future lit days. They found 73% of it found it extremely useful, 24 somewhat useful, and 3% not useful. So I thought that was really, really a positive for the outcome for that lit day. These are some of the feedback we got. One of the questions was, what was some valuable learning you took away? And then I also put the comments and feedback. Some of the great things is we had Tyler come, and he's a young man who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2, I believe, and he was nonverbal up until the age of 8. And he came and spoke, and it was so inspiring. And so there were so many comments about that, but I wanted to make sure you got a wide range of the comments and the feedback across the board. So fact fluency for kindergarten. Johnny is hitting math really hard with Michelle, to help with Michelle. Kids deal with a lot, be sensitive. That was about trauma we had. And then amazing, I want more love and logic. Jan Esep did a great presentation on something called small teaching. And it's about using small little changes in your classroom to try to get kids to engage or how to learn differently. And it has a great feedback from that, great feedback, so that's exciting. One of the last questions, in the future, what are some professional development opportunities you can feel to improve practice and have the greatest impact on student learning? We really want the feedback to be about how we can grow as teachers and how that can affect our students. And so this was some of that. This is some of the results that he said. Diversity training, some classroom management. I kind of like how a lot of it is connecting to the whole child idea, because it's really valuable with social and emotional. And of course, for my partner in crime at the very bottom, more math was mentioned. And I don't know how we can get more math in. Trust me, I try not to.
Yeah.
So I really did not put that there. That was one of the responses. It was only one, though. It was only one. But
And it wasn't mine.
so we are really trying. I'm sure it was. We are really trying as a leadership team to listen to what the teachers have to say, to take that to heart, and to begin building this vision of what's best for our teachers and, in the end, what's best for our students. One of the great things that I have the opportunity is I have 3 lenses. I have the lens of a parent, because my daughters are still in school, lens of a teacher, and I also have a lens of an administrator because I've been married to one for a while. So it's nice to have that connection and be able to have those 3 different ways of looking at things. Here's some great pictures. Katie did a great job on second step, which was really important from K2 teachers. They had requested that. Jake did a great thing on program assessment. And then there's Tyler. What was really, really empowering was Tyler McNamer was in here. We had such a large group at the end that he moved to the auditorium. And that's tough for certain kids with autism. And he did a spectacular job. It was just, like I said, so inspiring. Some STEM, and then again, complex trauma. So I want to say thank you, and I love this quote because this is why we do it. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. It's one of my favorite quotes. So I just want to leave you with that thought. So thank you. Any questions, I guess? Any questions?
No, just thank you for the pre-lid day stuff that you send out. It's really fun to see all the offerings that you've come up with.
Great.
Yeah,
Great.
so I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to see any of the other surveys results, I have it all compiled. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
I
Grace.
had a
Thanks.
question.
Sure.
One of the questions the kids had over at Jefferson was, actually I met with Craig Nelson, he was with us as well. The second step,
Yeah.
right now we have limited availability of those resources for individual teachers.
That was brought up in one of the meetings we had, and Craig had mentioned that he thought he had bought one for each of the teachers.
No.
No.
So anyway, the students thought, well, couldn't we get some more?
Okay, yeah.
And then we said, well, it's going to cost some money. I said, well, we can always get some grants. So
absolutely.
can you facilitate the grant for me, make me look good?
Yeah, sure.
For the students?
Sure, I'll just give it to, it sounds like Joe and Cameron are really good at writing grants, so.
Yeah.
So I
I'm
think.
sure
I'll
Cameron can do it.
I'll facilitate it, and then I'll just go ahead and facilitate it to them, if that's okay?
Perfect.
Right now, I think there's only 2 sets.
Okay.
Over at Jefferson, and
Great.
each of the grades would like one, so.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I've heard that from a couple schools.
Okay.
It was interesting, though, I thought Craig said they were put somewhere, he couldn't remember where they're put, so I'll talk to him about that, and
Okay.
make sure that we talk to the teachers.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Grace.
Thanks.
All right, next up, as part of Superintendent's report, we have Joe Thornton, and do a report on the asset preservation program.
Okay, Roberta, here it is. I know you've been waiting all week for this. You're so excited. So the asset prevention or asset preservation program is an annual reporting requirement.
There you go.
You can tell this one of these network guys never uses software like this. It's an annual reporting requirement that the state puts upon districts that have used any state money for a building. It used to be that we had to document, we spend a certain percentage of our budget on maintenance. They've moved away from that. Now it's this annual review. And the critical thing here is that it ensures performance accountability, and also to make sure that the taxpayer money that the state is putting into schools is being taken care of properly. So it's that reporting requirement, and we go through all these different components of a building and evaluate them as excellent, good, fair, poor, unsatisfactory, or if it's a system that doesn't apply. So my maintenance supervisor and I, John Narano, could probably do this from my office or his office because we know all the buildings pretty well and what's a problem. But we go through building by building and go through this checklist and fill out this form and then go online and enter it. So each building will have a report that looks like this. I did want to blow one of them up and point out to you that yes, this is the one for Pullman High School, and you expect all of them to be checked excellent. However, nothing is ever perfect, and I wanted to make sure that on the one for Pullman High School, I recorded the things that we need to circle back and make sure that we complete. So for example, in the commissioning report, I don't know if you remember, there was a recommendation to make sure we added a water softener to the heating system down the F building, and also a water softener for the cooling towers. So that are both there to indicate we need to make sure we circle back and do that. And then this is indicated because we are having ongoing problems with the security system that the contractor is still trying to debug. So I didn't want to click on tell them they're excellent when they're not working yet. And then finally, and this is a requirement that I report to the board by April 1st on this. So this is a form that's filled out online for the information and composition of schools and rates all the buildings so that you know where we are with the buildings. Any questions about that reporting process?
That's the one that's done by WSU, the ICOS reporting about, no, that's all right.
This is done through the EDS system, which is
Okay.
part of the OSPI reporting system.
Yeah, the ICOS, but
Yeah.
all right, never mind, it's,
And then finally, just to touch base on things that are issues, and one of the things that ICOS doesn't do, it doesn't do a very good job of having us report on outside spaces, because they don't really fund that.
yeah.
You know, so I just want to touch base on things that are on our radar that we know could possibly be a problem. One of them is a boiler at Jefferson that we're able to keep functioning, but we know at some point in time we're going to need to replace that. Actually, I'm meeting there tomorrow with McKinstry, which if you remember several years back, they're an energy engineering and consulting firm, and they're going to give us some feedback and let us know if there's possibly some grant money to help us with the boiler project at Jefferson. I actually met with them today here at the high school, and we looked at possibly some alternative energy solutions, because there are going to be, the details are still up in the air, going to be some Department of Commerce energy grants that might be available to help schools with some alternative energy. Sunnyside parking lot is having problems, but it's not really worth fixing because it's the whole hillside that's moving. So until we can really tear that up and do some foundational work and some compaction, it's not just a matter, because if we put new asphalt on top of it, it's going to be a problem. There's moisture under the multi-purpose room slab at Sunnyside, and they knew that going in because they put a drainage system in, and there's certain times of the year there's water that pours. If you go down to the scary basement, there's water that pours there. Again, not something that really can get fixed until it'd be a great space for an office for someone.
That's what I was just thinking.
I saw you looking. But again, that really can't be fixed. Every year Pam has to have that floor replaced. If we replace the floor, it's just going to become a problem again. There's some issues on the roof at JES that we are monitoring. The track at Pullman High School needs to be resurfaced. The plan is to pay for that out of the contingency fund at Pullman for the high school project. LMS stage lighting control, Cameron knows very well about this. The lighting control brain for the lighting at the LMS stage went out. The company that makes that made that system is out of business. The only company that now supports that will repair it. It'll probably cost us $8,000 to $10,000 for us to repair it with zero guarantee.
Oh, perfect.
It could last 20 years, it could last zero days, and we'll have no guarantee. So we're starting to look at some alternatives there. Pioneer Center, the city has told us that they are moving out of Pioneer Center by the end of 2019. So that's a building that we need to be making some plans on what to do with Pioneer Center. Diane is tired of hearing me talk about the Pullman Aquatic Center and the fact that the HVAC system there is going to need to be replaced, and that's going to be a big bill, probably in the neighborhood of $1 million, and we will be responsible for half of that. And then, of course, the Transportation Center. Any questions about facilities? It's not all good news. Sorry, Susan.
I know. Well, I just did the vouchers today and looked at the monthly Avista bill. Do something. I mean, it's just crazy. So they should at least give us the grant because we give them more than enough money.
We are also,
That's
we are also looking at some possibility of some solar block grants with them as well. So they're on a certain cycle with that, but I have been in contact with the manager of the solar block grants, and so I'm hoping that we may be able to get some of those grants that have been awarded to several other schools. And
Do we need to start strong on me, Paul Kimmel?
well, I'm working on it.
Okay, Paul.
And, keep in mind, we have some technology in this building that's new. We have, Sunnyside is pushing 23, 24 years old. I mean, that was built at a time when the energy code, energy requirements was very different than it is for a building like this.
Well, Cameron School is right up there too on the old energy bill.
Energy bill?
No
Turn the
matter
heat
how
down,
green you
Cameron.
are, Cameron, do something,
Yeah.
okay?
Don't worry, the sun will be coming in.
That's
Oh,
right.
okay, perfect.
So the heat will definitely.
Don't have that air conditioning turned up so high in the summer. There's no air.
I know.
Thanks, Susan.
All right,
You're welcome, Cameron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Next up, we have Dr. Kramer with the Washington School Improvement Framework Report. And board members, you have a handout that
Yeah,
Roberta
there's a
will be
pretty massive
referring
handout,
to.
so I'm going to refer to some of the things in it. The information that you'll see at the beginning of the handout is information that's available from OSPI, and so I put that there. I'm not going to go through it all, but it's a point of reference for you to go back and take a look, and if you have questions about it, please let me know. But they've just unveiled the brand-new system, framework system for school improvement. So that's some of the supporting documentation that they've provided to us, which is better than we've ever seen before. So, very good. And, yeah, I do. Okay, so, as I said, this is a new framework from the state, all related to ESSA. So as you know, I'm going to try to tell you what it is, because it used to be No Child Left Behind, and for whatever reason, that's at the tip of my tongue, but every student succeeds act, right? Okay, so this assessment is there are assessment and reporting that is required by the federal government that states that need to do, and then districts need to do in turn. ESSA requires that we use multiple measures to take a look at our schools, and that's what the framework really does. It requires us that, as in the past, we have proficiency related to state assessments in English language arts and mathematics. We also have to take a look at student growth. In their proficiency, have we seen an increase in students passing, and then also graduation standards? In addition, now there are 3 new areas: English language learner progress, and that really looks at their growth, but really, are they making adequate progress to transition out of those services within 6 years? So that's one of the new measures. Regular attendance is a new measure. And that's looking at the percent of students that are attending 90% or more school days. So that's a different kind of a measure than what we've had before. We've talked about unexcused absences in the past. We still have to keep track of unexcused absences, but in addition, we're looking at regular attendance. And then 9th graders on track, and that's first-time 9th graders. Sometimes we have some 9th graders that come in and they don't do well at all in their first year, and so then they would be counted as a second-time 9th grader, but we're only looking at those kiddos their first time, and then have they earned all the credits that they've attempted. Different now for us as a state is that last section, and that refers to schools that are identified for needing more support. And so the lowest 5%, that's not a change. In the past, we had the lowest 5%. That piece is not any different, but now what they do is they take a look at all the schools in the state. They say who are the lowest 5%, then that establishes the threshold. Any schools that are above that for all schools, they don't fall in that improvement. But if you fall in improvement, if you're anything lower than that 5% threshold, you'll be targeted or a comprehensive school. So now they call them comprehensive support or targeted support. It used to be called priority and focus. But really, the emphasis on this is support. And I think that under the leadership of our school superintendent, Chris Reichdahl, we're really seeing that emphasis of support. I can tell you that in our ESD, we have 81 schools that have been identified as needing some form of support. In the state, there's 887 schools. And you'll see when I start to go through our own schools, you'll understand that. So if you look at the next piece of the report that I'm going to go through is related to this data that you have before you on each of our schools. I'm going to talk about this colored sheet of paper. Those are going to be the slides that I go through. There's a second page on the back side of each school. There's one that looks like this, and this is just more information for you, but I'm not going to go through that specifically tonight. So we're going to look first at Franklin Elementary School. You can see that from this slide that Franklin Elementary School is demonstrating that kids are on target. They're making the kind of growth that they should be. One area that is perceived to need more attention is certainly that of students with disabilities, but they're not below the state threshold, and the state threshold is 2.4. And they determine that state threshold by the all students category. So any other areas that fall below a 2.4. So you can see that in Franklin, our kids are being identified as doing well, especially, I'm going to go back one slide here to the top part. Oops, I have to do that. Okay. This is very promising, this piece of low income. That's exciting. That's what we would hope to see, and that's what we do see at Franklin. And so that tells me that they're really focusing on getting to each child. Okay. Moving on to Jefferson. Jefferson is identified as a targeted school in one area, one to two areas is how they are identified as targeted 1 to 2 areas. The area identified as target is in students with disabilities. It would indicate that students with disabilities are not making expected progress or enough progress. And I'll talk to you at the end about some of the remedies that we've already put into place to address some of the concerns with the data. And that's also would be indicated more specifically related to each of the proficiency categories. Okay, Sunnyside. Oh, go ahead.
Question.
Yes.
Sorry, you said 1 to 2 areas.
Yeah.
I don't understand
Okay.
the second.
So the state has classified these as targeted 1 to 2 or targeted 3. So
Oh,
1 to 2
having
areas.
one,
okay?
oh, got you,
So
okay.
their one area is students with disabilities. Okay?
Sorry.
But when you're identified in that 1 to 2, you're basically they're saying, district, we know that you've got this. So, okay. Sunnyside. Sunnyside is identified in 2 areas, in low income as well as students with disabilities. And I believe that they, in addition to Jefferson, have put some pieces into place that are addressing that. Okay, this is based off of last year's student achievement data. That gives you further information. Lincoln Middle School. Lincoln is identified as a targeted school as well in one area of students with disabilities. And what that data says to me here, let's go there. Let's look specifically at the column on the furthest right, students with disabilities. It tells me that that our kids aren't making enough growth. So we're not able to demonstrate growth. We're able to demonstrate that growth to a degree at Franklin, but if you remember, Franklin was in that lighter orange, so that's concerning. I can tell you of the schools that are identified in the state, most all of them are identified in this category. Pullman High School. Pullman High School is identified as doing okay. Again, students with disabilities is in that light orange color, but not below that state threshold. So again, it would indicate that we do have work that we need to do in that category across the district. So, I'm going to put this in there. So on the, I believe, if you look at this handout, okay, and on this handout, it talks about the levels of support that the state will provide. Schools that are identified as comprehensive support schools get federal money for improvement. And you'll notice that it says exactly how much that is, what the base grant is, or the district grant, and then some competitive grants that are available. Okay. Tier 3 schools that are identified as having low graduation rates, that's not us, okay? They also can receive some money. If you flip this same page over, this is the best information we've ever had from the state. I'm so excited to say that. Okay. Targeted 3, so 3 groups that have been identified. There are some grants that are available there as well. We don't qualify for any of those funds. So we go into that Tier 1 foundational and directed supports. And originally I was like, oh, great, we're going to have some support. Well, then I find out that no, really, we're not. But I think that that's okay, because I think we've got a really great handle on it. So if we look at our next slide, takes now those LEA or lead education agency or local education agency, whatever it is that we want to call it, that piece is pretty big in that whole puzzle. And that's us. That's what we can do. And so when we take a look at, what have we already done? We have already added, we've gone from 1 to 2 special education teachers at each elementary school. And we went from 2 at the middle school to 3. And we're having conversations right now about, is that appropriate? Do we need to consider adding more? So really taking a look at how can we provide numbers and caseloads in a way that teachers are able to get to kids and to help them meet their goals. We've shifted from this whole idea of LAP and Title I programs or intervention being this other thing over here to this idea of Core Plus. And what we mean by Core Plus is all kids have to receive core instruction in reading and core instruction in mathematics. They receive that instruction in the general education classroom, and then in some sort of a model, whether it's push in or pull out, our kids get that plus or that intervention. So really trying to think of, okay, we've got to say that kids have access and need to receive core instruction first, and also get this plus. And I think that we've worked on refining those models in this last year, getting more intentional with what materials we're using, and we're starting to see, based on some progress monitoring, some pretty good results from it. We're set to have a meeting in April with those folks that do that work to have conversations about what that's going to look like next year and refining it even further. So those practices have to be completely intentional, and we have to know exactly what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it. We continue to support the student intervention teams in the response to intervention process. That's a lot of our work. Today, Johnny and Grace and I were all at one school before school started. I go to a school generally every morning to have these conversations with folks about how our kids are doing and what interventions are we putting in place for our kids that need them the most. We've expanded the math professional development, and I think we joke around a little bit about the math PD, but the math PD is making a huge difference, and we're really starting to see that. We're watching how kids are talking about numbers and how staff are talking about what kids know. And that piece is really changing. Just this morning, in fact, we were talking about a young lady, and we're able to say, you know what? She's kind of got some number things going on, but she's not able to recognize those digits. Now, we don't know why. We don't know what it is, but we're able to have that conversation about we get it to the digit rather than it's not, well, she just doesn't get math. We're able to get way more diagnostic about what is it that they're able to do and not able to do. So that's really exciting. And so we've done this math professional development, K-5 this year, K-2 last year, and next year we're going to add that core math instruction to this whole professional development focus at 3-5 and go there, and then K-2 the next year. And we've included the special education teachers in that professional development, and we were a little slow to step up to that plate. Not sure why, but sometimes not everything clicks for everybody, and we're like, that's who needs to be in those meetings. And now we've been talking about, should some of our middle school special education teachers be participating in that 3-5 PD in mathematics so that they can recognize perhaps what holes kids are missing. So really refining our thinking around that. And then we're really working on using interim assessments. Interim assessments are a part of Smarter Balanced Assessment, and they're tools that teachers can use to see where kids are, but also help them to target what instruction it is that they need to do. And Grace has been doing work with our principals around that because we feel like principals can't expect it if they don't really know what it is and don't know how to help lead those conversations. So we're in that process. She's also simultaneously working with some teachers on that. So next year, we're going to embed interim assessments in our assessment calendar. So that's going to be a first. We've never done that, but we're going to expect that happens, and it happens on a regular basis. And we've done some PD for paraeducators. I say, but I participated in one. Johnny's delivered a lot of that, as Grace has done some of that work as well. But it's really, those are our folks who are often the ones working with our kids in greatest need, and so we've got to provide them with some strategies about how to help meet those kids' needs. And then, of course, we have the great Grace and Johnny, and honestly, we could not do any of this work on this list without them, because having those folks who can go out and talk to teachers about their practice, because they get what the practice is about, because they're practicing teachers too, and can just pick up and say, you know what, let me work with this kid a little bit. Let me see what she really does know about numbers, and that's been invaluable. Absolutely invaluable, and we're thankful to the MMRE grant to the fact that they gave us Grace this year. We're going to take on Grace next year, take her back, and we're happy to have her back and to have those two are an awesome team, and that's why we're able to do this work. Make no mistake, this isn't about anything magic Bob and I do. This is about what those two do, and also our teachers and the teacher leaders in the buildings. I mean, it's exciting. That kind of PD experiences around all of the things that we need to keep working on, that's just helping to build leadership amongst our teachers, and it's very exciting. So I feel like we're on the right track. Our data doesn't look that great, but we're working toward things. And like I said, when there are 81 schools in the ESD, and most all of them are identified in special education, the special education study, I should have included that, or the WASA review. That's also a piece that will really help us with curriculum alignment and some of those kinds of things as well. So that's where we're at. And I'm happy to take any questions now, and certainly if you have any that you spend some time looking through the data and you want to come in and understand it differently, I'm happy to spend time with you.
Numbers breakdown, like how many students are in each school fall within the students with disabilities and that sort of
I
thing?
think that I could get that for you. It's just not readily available in that
Yeah,
format.
which is interesting, because I think that would help you really
Right.
get it.
There's also some catches around the numbers and the N size, yeah.
Yeah.
And on the one handout that I gave you, there's something that explains some of the N size components. I think it was on maybe the front, so you can take a look down in this corner, it kind of talks about the N size.
Well, I saw all the little green and orange people, but I didn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so that helps us to understand. And we have some N sizes that are, some categories that aren't represented, and it's simply because our N size isn't large enough. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was interesting
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah, the interesting part about the school performance framework this year was that they sent us all the raw data. Well, the raw data is pretty hard to, because it's just a ton of data. And then they sent us a notice on Monday to say that it would be released on Thursday. Yeah, so really a quick turnaround on the release of the data, which is totally fine. We were prepared. We had a sense of where it
And
was.
into this kind of a format, how long do you think that this kind of a framework or format is going to? Yeah, it would be so nice to be able to really do year to year to year kind of.
I'm hopeful that they'll stick with this. I don't know if our ESSA plan ever got approved by the feds, because
Our
I know
ESSA plan
that.
did get approved, but it will probably remain the same until the next
sure, why
election.
not? Yeah.
And it'll probably change. In the school performance reports, I'll just add to that, Susan, thank you. We were looking at comparable years. On this year's report, you're just going to see this.
Yeah.
Because it won't mean anything, because they're two different
Once again.
measures, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I want to also join in on your accolades for the two TOSAs sitting over there. They are, I don't want to embarrass you or anything, but you guys are awesome, and your enthusiasm is just unending. And it's wonderful to see. It's around with the teachers and students and everything else. Thank you. You really are making a difference, and that's just awesome. Yeah, well, thank you.
So I didn't get a chance yet to read how the data are,
sure.
this appears to be proficiency-based
Yes.
measures?
It's-
Or will they supply growth as well?
No, that's also included. So
Okay.
if you look, let's find a school.
But are the overall framework scores by groups, are those a combination of proficiency
Yes,
and growth as they
yes.
have been in the past?
And so what I included for you was, and this stuff is just coming out day by day.
Yeah.
Are in your handout, when you take a look at, this tells you how they're weighting the scores,
Okay.
which is an improvement, because before we never really knew
Right.
how that came to play. So this is new, okay? So this will give you a sense of how did they arrive at that? And then this chart tells you what score they got based on the percentage of growth or the percentage of proficiency. So this is huge.
All right, so
Yeah.
I will study that
Yeah.
and then let you know what my questions are.
Great.
And then the other question I had is, you mentioned bringing the interim assessments in as, upfront, put it part of the assessment calendar. Are we taking dibbles off?
No, Dibbles will still be there. Dibbles we use,
I just would like to somehow get some stuff
right.
off.
Well, it would be MAP testing.
Okay,
but-
that will come off.
No, I didn't say that, okay? Right, Grace, I might need Grace up here with me. No, we're not going to take, and here's what it is. I think we think of this as being another assessment. I want to think about this as, how do we know more about our kids? Okay, because then I think it's unpeeled. So once we find that out, and Grace has done, I've learned so much from her about interims and how to use them, and so maybe that's something we should do in a work session, because the data that comes from that drives our instruction is incredible. And you can do it in small chunks. It doesn't have to, it's not these big day-long experiences that we're thinking of. We're not, it isn't really this matter of we use them to prepare kids to have stamina on SBAC. That's not the purpose. And you can use a part of it, like Grace said to us the other day, you can have kids pair up and do an interim. It doesn't matter. It's about figuring out what it is that kids know and how we use then that information about what it is that they know in our instruction. So I think we need to think of interims as a non-traditional assessment experience. So it doesn't have to be this me against the world on this assessment. It's really about how do we use it instructionally, and how does that information then drive what we know about our kids, and then how to respond.
But there is still that balance then of every time you're assessing kids, you're not instructing them, and there's...
And I think I would disagree with that, because I think every time that we're assessing, we're instructing, because we're learning more about who those kids are. And so it's really about how we approach that. And I know that and believe me, I have been in that camp of more assessment, more assessment. It's really about what are they learning? Are we teaching what we should be teaching? And I think part of the benefit of the interims is that it's keeping us true to the standards. So.
Yeah, I don't question that there are benefits. I'm just looking at the total picture and what a kid's experience is in the month of April and May.
Right, but we're not putting these in April and May either. And that's part of been our problem. If part of the reason that we're putting them into the calendar is that sometimes people are waiting until after January to use interims. Well, then we are, just like this. So that's why we're going to be strategic about it and thoughtful and present different opportunities and options for people to use them. So that's coming. Part of the reason we have to keep MAP is for high cap and some of our other programs that we need that data, because that we're using some of those scores for some of our other programs. And I also think we can use MAP data better. We just haven't gone there yet. So, but we're going there next year. Anything else?
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, visitors.
All right. This part of the agenda is for anyone wishing to speak before the board, either as an individual or a member of a group. Visitors addressing the board will go to the microphone and state their name and address prior to presenting their information. The board will listen and may offer clarification, but will not discuss the topic at this time. The board may consider moving the topic presented to a future meeting date as a discussion item. Please keep your comments civil and respectful and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. At this time, we have no visitors signed in on the sign-in sheet, but by all means, you're welcome to address the board.
It's my first meeting.
Oh, you're fine.
Hi, my name is Mark Ninges. Some of you know me. Those of you who do, the opportunity to speak in a microphone, I never pass it up. I am the proud parent of 2 students in the Pullman School District. You are familiar with one of them, and since he's not in the room, I'm going to embarrass him by saying that in addition to being my favorite Pullman High School football player and junior varsity tennis player, he has recently earned his Eagle Scout rank in Boy Scouts.
That's amazing.
So wish he was here so I could embarrass him with that. But I wanted to share with you some information. I work for the College of Education at WSU in the development area. I do fundraising for the college. I have the opportunity to visit a lot of schools across the state in my job, and it gives me a profound appreciation for the school district here and the schools that we have in Pullman, and I thank you for your role in making that happen. But what I wanted to share with you is some news from the College of Education at WSU. Just today, they announced that the ROAR program, and if you want to know about what that acronym means, I will tell you later, because it's always difficult to do that. So some of you are nodding and you are familiar with that. So very briefly, the ROAR program at Washington State University is a residential experience a program for students of college age with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It is a program where these students who have aged out of a lot of the programs that's available to them through the school districts will allow them to live on campus with whatever assistance they might need and actually attend classes at WSU, and this is designed for students with those, disabilities that normally would not qualify for admission to WSU. I will not get into all of the statistics and, anecdotal information about what it means to have special education students integrated into the general population, but it is a big deal for us. Those of you might know someone who might qualify for this program. We anticipate the enrollment to be very popular because this is the first program of its kind in the Pacific Northwest, if not, even a larger area than that. We're pretty proud of it. I see a flashing light. My 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much. If you have any
It'll turn red when you...
Okay, if you want more information about that, it's very simple, education.wsu.edu. We have lots of stuff on there, and you can contact me through that website. Also, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
If you want to just fill in your address here, you'll be on the record. That'd be perfect. Thank you.
Just need your...
Okay. The next section of the agenda is the consent agenda. To expedite business at a board meeting, the board approves the use of a consent agenda, which includes items considered to be routine in nature. Any item which appears on the consent agenda may be removed from the consent agenda by a member of the board and voted on separately, and the remaining items will be voted on by a single motion. I would now entertain a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Are there any changes then? No.
No changes.
I will move that the consent agenda be approved as presented this evening.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next are action items. We have one action item tonight. It's Policy 1310, Policy Adoption Manuals and Administrative Procedures.
Thank you very much. So, again, Policy 1310, we talked about this last time. The primary substantive change is the addition of the sentence non-substantive editorial revisions and changes in administrative, legal, or cross-references need not be approved by the board. If the policy revision is approved, policy revisions that are not substantive would go to the board under informational items, so you would still have access to see that. If you did see something that you had a question about, you could always, during the board meeting, pull that back up into a discussion item. So this is just to streamline our process, especially as we're going through each of the series of sections. Many of these will be either no longer needed or may just be some cross-reference legal changes in the RCWs or WACs, which we can do that and just put it as an informational item. So if it's anything of substantive nature, then we would definitely be putting that in a regular discussion item.
Okay. Are there any other questions about that? Or?
I don't think so. I move approval of the Policy 1310, Adoption Manuals and Administrative Procedures.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve revisions to Policy 1310. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is any opposed? Okay. Those revisions are passed. We'll move on to our discussion items tonight, beginning with Policy 2000, Student Learning Goals.
All right.
Okay, the revisions to Policy 2000 is just additional language related to Goals 1 and 3 to better align with the law. So you'll see in 1, there's the addition of read with comprehension, write effectively, and communicate successfully in a variety of ways and settings and with a variety of audiences. That speaks more to what the standard is. And then 3, think analytically, logically, and creatively, and to integrate technology literacy and fluency, as well as different experiences and knowledge, to form reasoned judgments and solve problems. So you'll see that that has just provided is more explicit language to align better with what the intention of the law was.
And is this the WASDA?
Yes, WASDA recommended, yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Is the technology literacy and fluency, or have there been new laws in that area, or was it just not written into policy before?
I just don't think it was written into policy before. There are new standards always
Yeah.
in that particular area, but that just wasn't included to really speak to that there's an expectation for fluency. I think fluency is it's key now.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't when this was first adopted.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Next is policy 3131, attendance area transfers.
Thank you. So, attendance area transfers. This is, let me get that. So, 3131 has been revised for clarification and to align with with our process for reviewing in-district transfer requests. This is timely in that with the elementary boundary changes and moving into that. So we've taken a look at updating this so it does reflect specifically what our practice is, and also to clarify it. We started with the title where it says in-district attendance transfers to be clear. So if you were requesting an in-district attendance transfer, we also added school designated by the geographic attendance areas, which you'll be seeing at the next board meeting when the committee brings the proposal forward. We took out information that is neither no longer accurate or not part of our procedure. We also have updated in the 4th paragraph down to the superintendent's office using form 3131F, request for in-district student transfer. That does not used to go to the building principal. We really haven't done that. That always goes through our district office. Transfers may be granted, and so this was part of the WASDA language that's been inserted as well. Financial, educational, safety, health condition. B, attendance at another school in the district is more accessible. It also clarifies and space is available in the grade level or classes at the school in which the student desires to be enrolled. Again, WASDA language in C. We did add to 3 or financial hardship to the district, which is number 3, C3. That could become an issue, especially if you're going over a class capacity that may have some financial bearing. We clarified in the next one, in-district transfers must be granted. The student is a child of full-time, and that's from the WAC, actually, so that's law, where you see in-district transfers all the way down to those bullets. We scratched out some inconsistent language. Superintendent will have final determination regarding approval or denial of in-district transfers. Also, we added on to parents shall be informed annually. Again, this one, the superintendent Pullman public instructions annual information booklet on enrollment options. That seems to change just as much as some of our policies and procedures, so we left that in, although realizing that sometimes that's not updated or maybe inaccurate information depending on how often they update that enrollment manual. I deliberated taking that out or leaving it in. I left it in, but realizing that sometimes it's not always up to date, nor sometimes is it there. So really, the purpose was to update it with the WASDA language, also to clarify it with the process that we use, and to adjust it for our geographic attendance areas, because before we really didn't have those, other than within a mile radius of a school.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
The Form 3131F, is that something that already exists?
We already have that, and
Okay.
we'll be updating that.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, does it say in here somewhere, I'm just kind of skimming through it, I didn't have a chance to look at it very closely. Does it say anywhere that this needs to be an annual application, they have to apply every year?
On I believe it's on the procedure form.
Okay,
And,
okay.
and I think it did,
Because that's probably another thing that needs to be made clear.
and I thought, I have to read through it again too, I've looked at this so
Okay.
many times. Parents shall be informed annually of the district's attendance transfer option.
Okay.
It's in the last paragraph.
No, but
Is that the
Do you
same as
reapply
applying
each
every
year?
year?
No, it doesn't.
We
mean,
don't
that's-
have that on the policy, but that's maybe something that we need to take a look at adding.
Okay. Because they would need to apply each year, right?
Right.
Because the circumstances of every
Yeah.
school is constantly changing.
Good
I would think
catch.
so, yeah.
Apply. We will
So
work-
probably in that same paragraph as where it says the form they have to fill out, you could just add something that says
Yeah,
the form will need to be filled out.
Yep.
Or the request will need to be filled out annually or something.
good catch. Do you have that noted, Shannon? Thank you. Did you have any other questions on that?
No, that was it.
Okay, so this is actually our second reading of this
Actually, it is our second reading of
policy,
this.
so I would say with those changes suggested by
The application
Director
every
Tanner.
year.
this could be ready next time we meet as an action item, then, is that?
Yeah, we can have
I
that.
think so.
Yeah, we can have that ready.
Everything else seems fine.
Okay. Thoughts?
I was just thinking that's when the boundaries issue is coming up next meeting as
Yes.
well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that timing problematic? Or?
I don't.
What do you think, Joe?
Would you rather not have the transfer process as part of that?
Yeah. The only comment I'm going to make is, and I can see this going both ways, there's two sides to this, is a lot of people who are going to want to come and voice an opinion about the new elementary attendance zones are also going to be very interested in what this language might mean.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have cots available, you can bring some cots.
Well, we can definitely bring this back after that. It's not
Time sensitive.
time sensitive. So, I mean, we could bring it
I
back
think
in
that would
May.
allow the next meeting for open discussion
Yeah,
because of the two issues. One is on a policy change, the other is on the boundary
right.
issue, so,
I would suggest bringing this back in May.
okay.
It's not time sensitive, so it's that's not a problem.
That makes sense.
Because the constituents are now starting to voice their concerns, they're reading about it, they're thinking about it, and they're starting.
Sure.
I think, so I think it just gives them more time, it doesn't give the appearance that we're trying to rush this through.
Absolutely.
See, I think. that's-
Absolutely.
As long as there's time to deliberate.
Oh, there will be, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put this one on May, Shannon.
All right. Anything else? Okay. So next we move to policy 3244, prohibition of corporal punishment.
Okay,
I'll pull that up.
so unbeknownst to me, this was not a policy that we
I
had.
assume this was the law.
Yes, it is the law, and we have to live within this. We've always had to live within this, so we're just formalizing that by putting it into policy. It's a priority policy as defined by WASDA, and I'll just read it because it is all new for us. The use of corporal punishment in common schools is prohibited. Corporal punishment is defined as any act that willfully inflicts or willfully causes the infliction of physical pain on a student. Corporal punishment does not include the use of reasonable force by an administrator, teacher, or other school employee or volunteer as necessary to maintain order to prevent a student from harming him or herself, other students, school staff, other persons or property, physical pain or discomfort resulting from or caused by training for or participating in athletic competition or recreational activity voluntarily engaged in by a student. And 3, physical exertion shared by all students in a teacher-directed class activity, which may include but is not limited to physical education exercises, field trips, or vocational education projects. Sounds.
Is there a reason that there's no standard introduction, or we have a standard, well, back when I was on the policy committee and it meant the Pullman School District Board of Directors, all of our policies start with the
Have an
same.
intro.
We could have that
phrasing.
intro. I'd be
Well,
happy to add that.
It's neither here nor there. I was just wondering if there's a reason why it was,
No, I just took
Not
it straight from WASDA.
oh, well, they probably don't mention the Pullman School District in their sample policies.
I will add that.
We're
I will make an intro,
Trying to-
add that to the intro.
It'll
standardized,
standardize.
is all.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
And Roberta, the WAC laws were below, is that correct?
Yeah, they're right
Yes.
here, sorry. RCW 28A 150 and RCW 28A 655.
Good.
But I think, Bob, I don't think that, I think these go to the other one, to 2000. Go all the way back to Bob. I need to delete those.
Oh, delete those, yeah.
Part of the challenge was I'd never done a new policy before for us. So putting it into the format, as Shannon knows, I was a bit of a stretch for me.
But have you checked with WASDA? They don't have a sample policy on this?
Yeah, this is our sample policy.
But then there's no, they don't have the WAC references in their
They
sample
do.
policy?
They're not listed on there.
But I have two sets, I have these legal references that don't fit with it. Those are wrong.
Those are in for
Just
2000.
above this, Susan,
Yeah.
are the,
Okay,
Yeah,
are the actual
Good.
ones.
yeah. So,
They're underlined there.
I'm sorry,
see
they're
'em.
right here, they're underlined.
so this was a
My
historic
computer doesn't
moment
look
for
that
me
crossed
to do
out.
a new one.
They're right here, Susan, the WAC.
I got them. It's just on my spacing is so tight on my computer that it looked like it's crossed out rather than underlined.
Was this focusing on physical infliction? It says physical, right?
Yes.
Is there another one that talks about emotional?
My guess is that that's all covered within the child abuse laws. Not that physical wouldn't be, but we call out corporal punishment because corporal punishment used to be
Oh,
legal.
it sure did. Back in the day.
But now
Mr.
we're more
Knapp.
concerned about, well, I'm more concerned about inflicting emotional.
But I believe that those are all covered within the child abuse and neglect
Could that be
components.
cross-referenced in this one, just to differentiate?
I can check that out.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind.
So would that be like yelling at a student, or what do you,
Verbal abuse,
verbal abuse?
or, yeah, almost like classroom bullying
But from a teacher?
from a teacher.
Okay.
Yeah. Arm twisting. The things we do, and that's spoken from a teacher's perspective, I mean, because we do things and we have to catch ourselves.
There's also a professional code of conduct.
Yes.
And I
so-
think however we can define that,
I believe it's found also in the professional code of conduct for staff.
good.
But how do you define it? I mean, some little kids can come home and say the teacher yelled at me when the teacher didn't do anything other
Well,
than say
that's
you
why,
didn't do your
that's why
work.
I'm bringing it up, because
So, well, I know, but I
Those
mean,
are
how is
issues.
it, how is verbal abuse defined? Is it on the little kids' perspective? You know, there's some parents that just don't yell at their children. It's not a concept I understand, but there are some parents that don't. And, you know, if a teacher gets upset with this little kid and criticizes his work or something, he could consider that teacher yelling at me. Just doing worst case scenario stuff. So you have to kind of be careful on, it's just definitions, and it's so perceptive. I mean, it's what your perception is. And let's see, my daughter had a teacher that yelled at her, and she just loved it. My daughter would just sit there and go, oh, another one. So it's just a different deal. Anyway, there you are.
Okay, policy 4060, distribution of materials.
Thank you. All right, so policy 4060. So this one is a little bit complicated, so I'll try to spell it out. So this policy was created to align with the WASDA policy 460. In our current, it's called 4321. So the numbering is different between WASDA's and the Pullman School District policy. That's number one. And I want to incorporate elements and then eliminate district policy 4321. In addition, procedure 4060 has been created to incorporate the WASDA sample procedure and elements of the existing policy. So our existing policy 4321 also contained procedures, and I'll share that in just a second here. So what I attempted to do is number one, get the numbering to align with WASDA 4060, and put policy and policy and procedure and procedure. So with that, you can see that there's quite a bit of strikeout in here. And so we recognize that community organizations may wish to distribute materials. And this is strictly about distributing materials. Got rid of all this. Any group wishing to distribute material must submit the materials online application. And this is also following our current practice. So we're putting in what we do with that practice, striking out what is not correct in our process. 1 through 5 and below, 6, that's procedural elements that were then taken out of policy and put into procedure. And so basically the policy is pretty streamlined right now. Is that material must submit the materials online for approval, district website for more information. That comes to Shannon. Shannon goes to that policy or procedure for determining the materials and when they're distributed.
So does this include like the things that parents get through Peach Jar and stuff like that?
Yep.
For community events and stuff like that?
Yep. It all goes through one filter.
Okay.
So that's what this policy is about, trying to streamline that. So.
Good.
And to get the numbering in alignment with WASDA.
It's a lot of work.
Any questions on that one? I know it's a little confusing, but.
I always, this is a comment, not a question, I always hesitate when something just says, go look at the website, because I want to know where to look on the website, like some indication, like look under this tab or something.
It's under the community tab.
Yeah, I mean, just that much would help
Sure.
me or a person like me so much, because otherwise it's just like, okay,
Or it could be-
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I didn't put in the word peach jar because that could change.
Right.
Sure.
And then I didn't put in specifically where on the website, because that could also change.
Right.
But that's
Yeah.
less likely to change then.
Right, but just something like look under the community tab or something like that would just,
not to create more phone calls, but it might be worth to say, community tab or contact the district office.
Yes, I was going to suggest that too, in case some group did wish to distribute materials the old-fashioned way, but still needed to go through you to get approval for that process, then
Yeah.
they could.
We point everyone towards Peach Jar. We don't do paper copies anymore.
Just in case.
Yeah.
We're going paperless.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll add a clarification to that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts on that?
Okay, next, policy 4237, contests, advertising, and promotions.
Yes, thank you. So I want to thank everyone for the feedback on the first draft and at the work session also talking about that. So we have revamped that immensely. So we'll give it another go here. And so I'll try to articulate. We have an intro paragraph that we've kind of streamlined quite a bit. We've added criteria and this was similar to the language that we already had and also aligns with WASDA. Again, consistent with the district's mission, goals, policies. Will have an educational value, be free from an ejectable promotion, the name, sponsoring group. Students will not interfere with the program of curricular, co-curricular activities or be likely to inhibit functioning of school. That's currently, we streamlined, trying to also, the second part of this, we tried to account that we do have some advertising that exists, and so we've tried to incorporate that so it's clear. Like a permanent display at the baseball or softball fields and scoreboards at the high school, athletic venues, so long as that advertisements maintain acceptable condition, complies with policies and local ordinances. Also, this is new, temporary display advertising in a school building, gymnasiums, visible only during interscholastic events and competitions, special events, such as career fairs. That could also be Scholastic Book Club, right? We see that quite a bit at the elementary. So they advertise when they're there and then they take it down when they go. So that's, I think, a good compromise. Display on a school calendar when revenues received will support the printing of such. Other printed materials, and this was brought up, I like audiovisual announcements, only when a material product program admission is purchased with non-public funds. That could be a yearbook program for events where admission fee is charged. So again, trying to incorporate, I think, some of the comments that were shared at the last meeting. We did add revenues from venue advertising will first and foremost enable equitable funding of the ASB student body accounts. And that's to make sure that we're in compliance with Title IX. So we really took that information and tried to streamline that, hopefully into something that's a little more clear and meets the intention of the board.
Well, I will say that thank you for changing back to advertising rather than the manipulation of commercial
Yep.
purposes. Since
Yeah.
I found that highly offensive, given that we've donated well over $100,000 over the years to the school and its activities, and I didn't consider any of it manipulating materials.
And again, I was just taking language from other places and putting it together as a
I
starting
appreciate
place.
that, but on the other hand, using Seattle and bigger school districts for a smaller town really isn't, I don't think it makes it as relevant, because Seattle has, OSPI
Yeah.
and everything else, the monies. In a small town in lot of the outlying small-town areas, that really helps provide
Sure.
the fields and activities that these students could not otherwise do because of lack of levies and that sort of thing. So I think the frame of reference was poorly chosen.
So hopefully
this is a little better.
hopefully this better meets what your, the board's
Well,
intention is.
yeah, I was really offended. So there you are. Just want to get that out there.
Any suggestions, questions, comments, things you'd like us to take another look at? Again, it's just discussion. We have plenty of time before the next meeting. So if you do, feel free to contact Shannon or myself and we can take a look at that.
I may think of something else, but right now it looks good to me, so.
I think it's a good attempt at trying to capture, I think, what the conversation was last time. So hopefully this is helpful.
Okay,
Okay?
all right, thank you, and next.
I have one, I'm sorry.
well,
Allison,
no,
I
you're fine.
apologize, but I wrote it down here and forgot about it.
Would you like me to pull it
The
back
Pullman
up?
School District Board of Directors shall, as policy, support, if it's a policy, why do we need to say as policy?
That's a good point.
That, yeah, it just came
It's
from
kind of
the
redundant.
former preamble of the 4231. But yeah, that's,
We can take that out,
Yeah.
Susan, so it
Oh,
shall
Yeah.
support, because, yeah, it's
yeah.
It is the
not
policy.
needed.
it is a
Yeah,
policy, yeah, it's not
absolutely.
needed. Can you mark that one, Shannon? Thank you. Good catch, thank you.
Okay, so now we move on to policy 6700, nutrition and physical fitness.
Another one in between there.
There is just one in between, but that's the deletion of 4321.
Do we need to, okay.
This is just taking our old, the one I just presented would be the replacement for this, so you would no longer need 4321.
Right.
It would be 4327, so I don't think there's too much discussion on that, so, okay.
Okay,
All right, now.
now, policy 6700.
67, sorry.
Policy 6700 refers to nutrition and physical fitness. It's one of those blended policies that requires a combination of support services and curriculum and instruction. So that requires Bob being able to get Roberta and I in the same room at the same time, which is sometimes a challenge.
It is a challenge.
The language changes that WASDA are suggesting here really stems from House Bill 1235, which in a nutshell, bills introduced in the House to address growing obesity problem among students in public schools. Starting the 18-19 school year, school districts must assess their physical education programs annually and submit the results to their Wellness Committee and OSPI, which will analyze the data and post a summary on its website. A lot of the language changes you see in here are somewhat to do with housekeeping. For example, they've moved away from referring to children and youth and uniformly calling them students. Some of it's some organizational pieces, but a big part of it is having taken this paragraph here of comprehensive curriculum and breaking it out into two pieces. Nutritional food services program, which would be my venue, and if you scroll up for me, to the health and physical education program, which is Roberta's area, and that's the part that's requiring that annual reporting. There were some other language recommendations that they had in there that use language such as best practice, and when funding is available, school districts should, and we're electing not to include that because it's a gray area that we don't like gray areas in policies. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It might be a Diane question or a Shiva question? What does it mean to use the full entitlement of USDA foods?
So, there's USDA commodities that we get, and so we have to use all of that and claim all of that each year. It's about $68,000. And so it's commodities that they provide.
And so are we required to have that in here? Is that
I don't know if we're required to have it in the policy, but I would think we would want it in there to show that we are using those commodities.
I'm wondering, just because of some of the research we've done on the Wellness Committee pertains to districts that have tried to upgrade by rejecting certain commodities that they find objectionable, like a low-grade peanut butter that's got shortening as the filler, as an example, might be something you would get as a commodity. And as a district, you want to have the power to say, we don't want that commodity. We would rather pay for something to replace that, to replace that commodity that we find objectionable. And so for me, if it says that we are going to use the full entitlement, that, I mean, I know it's just one of many policies surrounding commodities that are really, really complicated, but
that would be your call, I mean, as far as putting it in there or not.
Well, I think what we should probably do is check with Sheba to see how that, how that might affect the application for us. I don't believe we have to accept everything, but I do believe you have to accept something if you're receiving federal funds.
Yeah.
And she has tried over the years that she's been here to gradually do more creative kinds of grants and get fresher foods and things like that, and is, to the extent that she can, has steered our program away from some of those commodities while still claiming the ones that are a good value for our students.
And I know our commodities are about the same every year. In fact, they're going up a little bit. So, she must be claiming a large percentage of it.
By the way, one of the things Sheba's going to be presenting to the Wellness Committee on the 12th of April is a scratch cooking program that they're starting to implement in the Spokane area that she'd like to start to put into place down here. So she's going to be talking on the 12th about that to the Wellness Committee.
So I would suggest we go back, Joe, and have Sheba do a little research into what are the requirements that we have to have.
Yep, I made a note here.
And then on the district will ensure that the following requirements are met. All students in grades 1 through 8 receive an average of 100 instructional minutes per week. Why not kindergarten? Since they're full day now.
It's not required.
It's not required.
So, okay. But it is required that they have quality standards-based health and physical education program. It just isn't required how many minutes?
Right.
Yeah,
That is correct.
that's correct.
Yeah.
I think you put more. Keep them running.
I agree. Wear those guys out.
Yep, another great parenting skill.
Other questions?
Thanks, Joe.
Right.
Going back to the commodities issue that Allison brought up, I would assume that Sheba is doing some scrutiny of the commodity use. And that could actually go into a procedure, couldn't it? It wouldn't have to necessarily be in the policy. It could be a procedure
Could be.
So.
that the commodities are scrutinized before they're accepted.
That's really a procedure, not a policy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'd like to find out how much we're really required so we don't.
Well, and how much
mess up
scrutiny Sheba is doing.
Yeah.
Is she looking at butterfat, or is she looking at lard, or is she looking at filler, or what is she doing?
Well, knowing Sheba, she's pretty
That's what
pretty good at being helpful.
That's why I use the word scrutinize.
Okay.
So
I just hope
somebody's overseeing that use of the commodities. It's not just being.
Yeah.
I guess that was what struck me about using the full entitlement of the commodities, was trying to think through the piece of how is that linked to wellness in particular. I mean, it might be a good fiscal practice, it might be, there's lots of reasons to do that, but I couldn't think of an actual wellness reason to focus on commodities as opposed to other kinds of foods.
Well, I think that if you read through that, I think a lot of it is talking about making sure meals are affordable.
Yeah.
And obviously a piece of that, a piece of making meals affordable is making sure that we have that USDA support for that program. That's what I'm going to hypothesize that language is in there for us.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of USDA stuff there, so I'm sure it's probably something you can send to the USDA saying, see, aren't we awesome? We are.
So having Sheba review this for us, yeah, that's good.
I don't, and it's been a long time since I've been in food service, but it used to be that you didn't have to take the full entitlement. You had a menu and you select it, like, yeah, we'll take the cheese.
And that's
we'll
my
take-
concern,
we'll take
is
the
just
peanut
that we
butter.
should be able to choose.
Yeah.
We didn't take the whole offering, so.
Because another thing is, you know, we want to be culturally sensitive, and we have a significant population of students who don't eat pork. If we are required to take all the USDA pork,
Yeah.
that's,
And I'm just going to predict here, I'm going to, and again, we'll get clarification for Sheba, but perhaps that word means, full entitlement means a dollar amount
right,
versus
Could be.
a certain
just
Menu.
want to
menu,
make sure.
a certain
Yeah,
delivery. Take it or leave it.
yeah,
And you can't leave it. You have to take it.
I know, yeah.
And I think you may be right, because I know some other districts that have pulled out of the USDA program, it was, well, if you're not going to do this, then you can't have this, so they said, fine.
Yeah.
And the whole thing goes away. But so does that money.
Which may complicate the whole free and reduced lunch program that's
Yeah.
supported by USDA.
Yep. Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
But we'll do a
Thank
little,
you.
we'll do a little more research and
Yeah,
we'll try to get some clarification on that.
good. It's good policy.
all right. We have several information items on the agenda tonight. Administrative requirements update, board calendar, current enrollment, and the procedure that accompanies policy 4060. Would any board member care to discuss any of the informational items tonight? Seeing none, we will move on. Tonight if there are no objections, we will now recess into an executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel and negotiations. Superintendent Maxwell, how long will the executive session last?
5 minutes.
It will be a 5-minute executive session during which no action will be taken, and after that, we will adjourn.
Awesome.